Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to offer a few tips for first-time renters. So these tips would apply for anybody who is looking to rent an apartment and or a house from like a landlord. So I have been renting since February of 2019. I have lived in this place that whole time and I really like it. I know renting isn't for everybody, but that's not what this video is about. We are probably here if you are a renter, first-time renter, or just looking for some tips for being a renter. I do have another video on renting. I don't know how much of this information is in that video, honestly. So there may be some overlap, but today's a new day. I think I filmed that like over a year ago anyway, so these tips are still valid. I do want to say that overall, renting is quite simple and it's not that like you don't have to do anything crazy. I would assume buying a house is much more difficult. I do not own a home, so I'm not going to be speaking on that, but when it comes to that, I will. But renting an apartment is pretty straightforward. I have not ever rented a house, but I know there are some similarities, so I will try my best to offer tips for that as well. My first tip is for you to get a head start before you even rent. And what I mean by that is have a head start in your finances before you even start to look. So I wouldn't go into an apartment or into a rental unit without having some cash saved up because you're probably going to need it. I know some situations are, dire and you have to move immediately, and that can get a little bit tricky, but if you can, try to save up a bit first, try to get like a month ahead or maybe even 2 months ahead, and then start looking for somewhere to rent. The reason I say this is because typically when you're renting from a landlord, oftentimes they ask for first month's rent or like just a month of rent before you even move in. When you move into an apartment, the same can be true, but they'll typically at least ask for a security deposit. I think for my apartment, it was like $300, which isn't too bad. So that's what I gave them. They have that still. I haven't, I would get that back once I move out and everything looks okay. So you do have to prepare for that. And I did have to pay, upon moving in, I did have to pay rent. So it was prorated, so it was like half a month, but still I had to make sure I had that cash on hand so that I could pay them and actually move in. It's just good practice to be a month ahead anyway so that you are good to go when it comes to starting this new journey and just paying your rent on time every single month. You do want to make sure you pay on time and avoid those late fees or even just missing payments completely, because obviously that's going to affect your living status and who knows what could happen. Being financially well overall is important, but as I said before, moving into an apartment is relatively easy. So if something breaks in your apartment as soon as you move in, you don't really need a huge emergency fund like as if you moved into a house of your own, because the landlord or the apartment maintenance staff would take care of it for you, which is great. It's probably unlikely that you move in and immediately something happens, or hopefully that's the case, but it is still nice to have cash on hand so you can also like buy things that you're gonna need, because when you move into a new place, there's always something that you need to purchase. Tip number 2 is to be careful of scams and or red flags. Apartments are pretty straightforward. You can often see like a Google review or Yelp review and see what it's like to live at an apartment. However, if you come to the leasing office and there's like nobody there, or you've called them multiple times and nobody has answered, they're not very friendly, maybe there are other people who live there that are, trying to get a hold of them as well. Like you're at the leasing office, multiple people are at the leasing office, and it's just not quality communication or customer service, then that can be a red flag. Not always the case, but it can be. The reason you should be careful of this is because that's going to reflect what's probably going to happen once you move in. So if you request some sort of maintenance or you ask a question, are they going to email you back? Are they going to answer their phones? Are they going to fix your issue? And if their communication is poor for a new customer, people that they're trying to get into the door, trying to get their money, then that can be a red flag. So just be careful of that. And I know for myself, I rely heavily on Google reviews. So I know sometimes they're skewed in a bad direction, but it's good to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. So definitely check out any reviews that you can. When it comes to renting a house from a landlord or like a smaller company or something, if there's minimal photos of the property, of the house, of the apartment, whatever it is that you're renting, that can be a red flag, because what are they trying to hide is the first question I ask. I don't like when there's not enough photos of something. So if they're trying to hide something and you're not seeing like all the bedrooms, or they're barely showing the kitchen, or it's just like the front of the property, I would say that's a red flag, and you definitely want to be careful. So obviously you could go look at these and make sure they're up to your standards, but just be wary of that. Another red flag is when they're asking for payment before meeting them, or before even getting the keys type of situation, or before signing anything. I've seen something like this on Reddit before, actually a couple of times. So people will share that, or ask about a landlord offering the keys on this date. You just need to send the money in the mail, or wire it to me by this date, and then we will meet here and I will give you the keys and you'll sign everything. No, do not do that. That is definitely a scam. They will probably take your money, never give you the keys. You will probably never meet them, and they will rinse, repeat, and move on to the next person. Tip number 3 is to ask questions. So before you go to a complex or to a house to get a tour and meet the people, prepare some questions to ask. You could ask about different options when it comes to payment. Is it going to cost less if I sign a lease for a longer amount of time? What are the utilities? Are there any utilities included in rent? Do I need to pay for trash? What's the pet policy? What's the parking policy? Like, can I have guest policy, I guess you would say. You could ask about the area that it's actually located in. Obviously, the complex could lie, or the landlord could lie. Like, you could ask about the safety, the crime level. They could lie about that. Those are things that you could look up, but you can definitely ask about it. You could ask about if there's like anything around, like fun stuff to do, or the best food places around, or parks or something, and oftentimes they'll be able to answer that. You can ask if you can make changes to the apartment. That's not something I do. Like, I don't paint the walls or anything. I wasn't interested, but you could ask that, see if there's any fees for making any changes, or what the policy is there. Whatever's important to you in your living situation, whatever may come up, just prepare those questions. It's typically just a list of a few things that are important to you, and then you can take those to all the places that you tour. But definitely ask questions, be curious about everything, and it also helps you to get a feel of the landlord and or leasing management. Number 4 is to always negotiate, because there is a slight chance that you could win this negotiation, or at least get a better value for what you're signing up for. I know this can be intimidating for some people, but I always try to just go for it. I know when I moved into this apartment, I did ask for the price to be lowered. They did not budge when I initially signed up. However, I have now renewed my lease 2 times, right? 2020, 2021. Yeah, I've renewed my lease 2 times, and both times I did negotiate what they wanted to increase it. I can't remember last year. I know I got it lower, but this year I was like, I don't want my rent to increase at all. Can you discuss this with the building manager? Initially, they wanted to increase my rent by like $83 or something like that. And so again, I asked for $0 increase, which did not happen, but they only increased my monthly rent by $23. And then they sent me that documentation. Actually, they sent me the documentation and the number was incorrect. It was like, I don't know, I think $20 higher than that. And I sent it back and I said, per my last email, like I explained, I had it all in writing, which is gonna be my next tip, but I had it all there and I was like, can you please adjust this? Because you don't wanna sign anything that says the wrong thing, of course, so always double check that. But yeah, I always negotiate, because you might as well, and it doesn't really hurt anything. Oftentimes, people are expecting that, especially like a landlord, so you could at least ask for some sort of benefit, or like to lower your monthly balance by X amount. And when it comes to negotiating, you definitely want to have your reasons lined up. So for me, I don't have pets, so it's obviously going to be less damage, and I've never missed a payment. I've always made a payment on time, the exact due date. So that's always been my thing, and just being like a loyal customer, like they would probably rather have me here than try to find somebody to fill the unit. So just saying a few things that back up your reason for negotiating is really important too. Okay, and I briefly mentioned this, so tip number 5 is to get everything in writing. You really want to make sure that whatever you say is actually recorded. So if you have a lower rate, make sure that is written down, make sure it is, signed, get the name of the person. If it's like at an apartment complex, make sure you get their names, make sure you have all the information that you need in writing, and double check everything before you sign, because like I said, I got that leasing agreement, I was about to sign it, but I noticed that it was $20 higher than we discussed. I sent it back, they fixed it, and then I was happy and I signed that. So once you sign something, it's a done deal. You can be like, oh, this was wrong, but they'll be like, you signed it, right? So you really want to make sure you pay attention to that, get every single thing in writing, no matter what it is. If there's going to be like 1 month where you get a discount or you get something for free, then make sure you either have that in your email or something printed. Those are my main tips. I will offer a few more things. So obviously location can be an important thing. So you may want to visit the apartment complex or the house that you want to live in a few times during different times of day. So maybe, see what the traffic is like or see what the activity is like in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, because that can be important. Oftentimes people do know where they want to live, but that is something to consider, because the house might be amazing and beautiful, or the apartment, but the area can be sketchy or super high traffic and it's just not going to work with your job. So that's something to look out for. Another thing that I suggest you do, primarily if you are, if you're moving into a neighborhood or if you're going to a complex, this is what I did when I first toured here. I saw a couple of people who came out the doors, and I asked them if they liked living here. And the 2 people that I asked said, actually I think I asked 3, but one was like, I love it so much. And then the second person was like, I really, really like it, and I'm actually about to sign another year of a lease. So if that tells you anything, that's like literally what they said. And yeah, that was like, okay, great. I know that I'll probably like it too if these people love it. And now I can say that I do absolutely love living here. And so if anybody were to ask me, that's what I would offer them. So I do suggest asking around. You could ask people that you live next to what it's like to live in the neighborhood, or how the owner of the house is even. Obviously be a little bit careful with that, but it's still worth, you could get to know your neighbors. Another thing is to ask for any sort of I forgot what they call it, preferred partners or something, preferred employees, preferred companies, because I know when I moved in, I think they asked me, but I don't know if all places do this, but they asked me where I work, and I mentioned it, and they were like, oh, you guys are preferred tenants or something. I can't remember what it was, but they were like, you get to, they waived the fee or something. I don't know. There was some sort of savings because I was a preferred tenant, because my job is respectable. So it depends on the location, of course. I'm in an area that there are a couple of larger companies that are more respected. So they appreciate that. They want those people living here, because that means you're probably going to be a better tenant, and you get some sort of reward for that. So be sure to double check on anything of that sort if it applies to you. But those are my main tips. Let me know if I missed anything. Comment down below what you think. Feel free to share your experience with renting, any wins or anything crazy that has happened to you. Again, I know renting is not for everybody, and if you're feeling hesitant about renting, or if you feel like you're going to be blowing your money, it does sometimes feel like that. It does suck to use so much of your money for rent and not really get anything in return. But remember that this is your house. It's keeping you safe. You have a roof over your head, food, water, all that stuff. So I still really appreciate it, and I don't mind having to pay my rent every month because of that. Anyways, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.